Yule. It's the most wonderful time of the year because it's the time when everybody openly practices paganism. Yule is the Pagan Sabbat that is practiced around the time of the Winter Solstice, the darkest time of the year, that time when we are the furthest away from the sun. Yule actually marks the longest night that we're ever going to have. It's the coldest time, it's the darkest time. That's why whenever we do get together to practice Yule, we have to remember to bring out our inner light to bring balance back to the world. Yule falls around Christmas time, which people always say is the most wonderful time of the year. And I would agree because it's at the time when everyone openly practices pagan practices and doesn't necessarily know it. What you will find when you start to look a little bit more deeply is that when we do implement all of our traditions around Christmas, they're actually Yule traditions. The word solstice means for the sun to actually stand still. So it's at the most extreme points where the sun is in relation to the earth. So we get what is called the longest night. That is the time when the sun sets the soonest, and we do go through the longest, darkest time of the year. All of our traditions always center around bringing light and bringing warmth back to our existence. So we try to find ways in which to bring in that warmth, to bring in that color, and to bring in that light, even though we are not seeing it necessarily in the world around us. It's a call to action for us to create that light and to find it within ourselves and to connect it with everyone else. Samhain is the beginning of winter. So by the time we get to Yule, we're kind of in midwinter. At that peak of winter, you're not going to see the greenery, the color. You're not going to see foods being produced by the earth. So we bring the greenery in to our home to remind us that evergreen is actually showing us how we always have that warmth and we always have that potential and we always have that magic within ourselves. So when we put it around our home, even though you're not necessarily seeing it outside, it is always there. We are always surrounding ourselves with the power of the earth, moving in rhythm with our environment. You will see the wreath. And the wreath is a beautiful representation of the wheel of the year, which shows us that there's a constant turning and a continuation. And even though you might be on one side of the wheel, there's always something on the other side that is influencing where you are. So even though you are in the extreme of dark and cold, there is always that point of light that is reflecting and coming back into our existence. A good connector with that is actually mistletoe. Mistletoe peaks around the time of the summer solstice, but we bring it into our homes during the winter solstice because it represents that fertility and that prosperity and that power. And because it represents fertility, you get the tradition of the kiss under the mistletoe, that energy of the god and the goddess coming together to create. So then we bring in the boughs, the mistletoe, we bring in the wreaths, and then of course, the peak of all of that energy is when we bring in the evergreen, we bring in the Christmas tree. Even though it's called a Christmas tree, it's really a very powerful Yule tradition. First off, it's the earth element coming into your home. It brings in that strength, it brings in that power, and it brings in that stability. It's kind of funny that we call it a Christmas tree, because if you look in the Bible, there is actually a passage in the Bible that really admits that it is a pagan practice, and it kind of advises you against doing that. In Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah, chapter 10, verses 1 through 5. So look that up. With the Yule tree, or the Christmas tree, or whatever you'd like to call it, we like to decorate it with everything that we'd like to manifest. And that's why you're going to put silver and gold for prosperity. You're going to put the red of life force and vitality and love, pictures, maybe little gifts, sweets. And you decorate that tree because it becomes a focal point of manifestation in your home. So whatever you're putting on the tree is basically a message to the universe, and then as soon as you light it up, all of that energy sends that message out so that manifestation can come back to you. There are so many Christmas carols, Deck the Halls, where it really does show that tradition from Yule. Deck the halls with boughs of holly. And the holly represents the Holly King, that dark half of the year, that introspective half of the year, where everything starts to become more of a focal point on what's going on within. At that point of Yule, it's almost like the Holly King's retirement party. He's at his absolute peak and he's ready to kind of pass the torch back to the Oak King, who is the light coming back to the world. Because once you pass the winter solstice, then each day gets a little lighter and a little warmer than the last, because you finally pass that peak of midwinter. So slowly, the Oak King is coming back to life, and that is the light that's coming back to the world. We've got the holly and the ivy is a very good one. The holly, of course, being the Holly King, and the ivy representing the goddess. So the holly and the ivy coming together so that the Oak King can be reborn. There are so many of these messages coming out in all of these traditional carols. Of course, there's wassail, all of these traditional drinks that have a lot of kitchen witchery going on in them, and they reinforce all of these practices of prosperity, of warmth, of health, and of course of love, and bringing that into the home. Which brings us to, of course, the Yule log. That's something that we're openly talking about Yule finally. When you're bringing the Christmas tree into your home, cutting off a piece of the trunk so you can get it situated into your tree stand. And you always want to save that. That should be the first wood that is burned for the midwinter fire when it comes to Yule. So that can become your Yule log. Drill 3 holes in there and you'll put the 3 candles representing the Holly King, the Oak King, and the goddess. Also the 3 aspects of self, body, mind, and spirit, the 3 phases of maiden, mother, and crone, and you can decorate the Yule log with the holly, you can decorate it with the ivy, and you can bring all of these beautiful practices together. And once you do light it, you are bringing the good luck and the prosperity from last year into the present and remembering that which has gone before you to create beautiful memories for the year to come. When we look at a solstice, there's always a lot of duality there. Even though it is the practice of Yule and we're used to all of this light and all of this warmth, the giving of gifts, there's also this part that you do have to recognize that it is cold, it is dark, and you will be feeling that. And it is also a time to recognize that dark part in ourselves, not just the internal, but also the ancestors. And there has always been a tradition of ghost stories around this time, because in the cold, in the dark, there is that part of ourselves that is cold and dark, and we do have to honor that. We want to accept all parts of ourselves. There are actually 2 aspects. There is that part of us that celebrates this time of gift giving and loves it and loves the music and loves the light. And then maybe there's that part that is not totally on board. Maybe doesn't feel like celebrating. I feel like when I get home, I'm done and I'm putting on my pajamas and I don't really want to do much else. So there's this little dichotomy during this time of year that I should have holiday spirit, but I don't always. You can see that when we observe the gift-giving part of St. Nicholas, but then there's that little dark part that might seem a little creepy sometimes, just that internal monster. That is represented by Krampus. Krampus is an old tradition that is starting to really pick up steam right now, the demon that comes to get the bad kids. And then whoever's left over, St. Nicholas, can give the gifts to the good kids. Krampus represents the new moon and all of the things in which we use to block our manifestations, the ways that we sabotage ourselves, the ways that we doubt ourselves. And we have to face that Krampus within ourselves and release him so that when the full moon comes in, we can fully celebrate that part of ourselves that resonates with St. Nicholas. By recognizing both of those aspects, it makes the holiday that much more real for us, doing the internal work to get us where we need to be. If you look at the wheel of the year, technically our year starts on Samhain. So this would be the first Sabbat practiced right after the new year. So a lot of people will think that this would be the time for New Year resolutions. Honestly, this is really the time where we have to look at what still needs to go. Okay? What have we outgrown? Because we can't really understand what can come in until we realize what we've outgrown. Evaluating where you are and looking very deeply. And that's why it does resonate so much with that coldest, darkest time, because you're going to go into that deep part, recess of your mind that can often be cold and dark. You do want to find those aspects that you have outgrown, the parts that are keeping you from moving forward. And we can kind of celebrate what we do love, thank the parts that we're ready to outgrow, and just release them with the same love that we're bathing on the parts of ourselves that have shown growth. So it's an ultimate act of love, it's an ultimate act of self-acceptance, and then that makes us that much ready to move forward as the light continues to grow.